new quilt block today, and this one is called the Double T block. And for this particular block, we are going to follow the pattern. The pattern is from American Patchwork and Quilting. The website is, or the name of the patterns are All People Quilt. And this again is called the Double T block. So there are some half square triangles and some flying geese that we're going to use. I'm using this fun batik, this green. I really love the color. And we'll go over the measurements. This is a free pattern, and I can link the pattern in the description. So this was going to be another 12-inch finished block, which means that it'll be 12.5 inches unfinished. To get started, you are going to need one of the 4.5-inch squares. This is going to be the center. You will need two 4 and 7/8-inch squares in both your background and your print. If you're not thrilled with 7/8, take it up to 5. So it could be 5 inches square, not 4 and 7/8. You're just going to cut off a little extra fabric when you square it up. It's not a problem. The background fabric, I've already drawn a diagonal line from corner to corner to make those half square triangles. Just want to make sure they're on the right side. Then, in order to make the flying geese, we are not using a newer traditional method where we make them all at one time. We are using what they have in their pattern, which is just to create these squares, or rectangles, I should say, out of the background fabric. And so this is 2.5 by 4.5 inches. And then the 16 squares, there are 8 of these, and then there are 16 of the 2.5-inch squares. And we'll do that to make the flying geese. So let's get started. Again, you can decide which way you want to start, but you need all the pieces. So we're going to need all of our flying geese, and we will need all of our half square triangles. So we're going to start with the half square triangles. And there are 2 blocks, and these blocks are going to yield 4 half square triangles. We're going to match up those sides, get everything nice and even. One background, oops, on top of one of the colors squares. I hate the word colored. Once everything's together, you can pin it if you like, but we'll take it to our machine, and we're going to do a 1/4-inch seam on either side of the line. The line is the cutting line. So we're not stitching on the line. We will for those flying geese. This one we're stitching a 1/4 inch on either side. We can do what's called a scant 1/4 inch, which means it's a hair or two shorter than a 1/4 inch because it gives us a little bit more wiggle room, but we don't have to worry about that because we went up to 5 inches. So I'm going to stitch, whoops. Using that line as a guide. Something is wrong with my thread. Okay, that didn't work out too well. Something got caught up that I didn't want to get caught up. It happens, even to the best of us. Something got caught on the back, and yeah, let's rip that out and start over again. Who knows what that was or why that happened, because it shouldn't have, but maybe I didn't thread something right. Okay, let's try this again. Everything looks fine up top. We'll put that back down at the bottom. And let's run that through. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong, other than, knowing me, the possibility of cleaning a machine or changing a needle. So any one of those things for me could be wrong. Let's try this again. If it happens the second time, we're rethreading some things. Okay, that sounds better. Sometimes when you hear those noises, go ahead and stop. But no, not me. Much better. And let's do the second one. And we're just doing one side each, and then we'll flip it and do the other side. You can do them one at a time if you like. That's totally up to you. Oops. Once you have a plan for your blocks, these do go relatively quickly. We'll be working on quite a few projects today. Getting the block of the day out is my first goal. I have a lot of scraps that I've cut up, and I do want to do something with those, so I already have a plan in mind for that. And then we'll do this last one. So we could wait until the end to cut and trim, but we'll go ahead and do it now while we're in this process. Okay, a couple long threads, we'll cut those. And we'll cut this in that snip. So on either side of the line, again, the drawn line is a cut line. I have a 1/4 inch on either side. I can use my straight edge or my scissors. Line this back up with the line that I drew, which is the cutting line. And cut those in half. Okay. And then when you open these up, you have a 1/2 square triangle. We're going to take these to our machine. As I always say in every video, it is completely up to you whether you want to press your seams open or to one side. There are benefits to doing it both ways, so it's totally up to you which way you want to go. I am going to press to the dark side, so that means I'm going to lay this flat, and using the lighter side of the fabric, I'm just going to press my iron, press that seam in that direction towards the darker fabric to look like that. And we'll get all 4 done. You don't need to do a lot of ironing. You want to do a lot of pressing. So ironing is this, and it tends to mush your fabric. It tends to cause it to warp or wave. And if we do that, we distort. And when we distort, our measurements can be off. So a lot of times we will use a dry iron. That means there's no water in the reservoir, and that is to help reduce the steam so that we're not shrinking our fabric. Often quilters do not wash fabric. I said often, not all. We will we'll steam it, or we will starch the heck out of it to get it to shrink, and then we use it from there. And if it shrinks more, it'll shrink after we wash it, but we usually don't wash our fabric. And I said usually because there will be somebody who will come for me and say, I washed my fabric. And absolutely, that's fine. So to each his own. Sometimes when the fabric is red, we'll wash it because often red fabrics tend to bleed. Okay. So I'm lining this up at 4.5 inches. So I want my half square triangles to be 4.5 inches square. I'm trimming off any excess so that I get a nice square half square triangle. And then we'll set those aside once we finished all of those. This is a cheaper ruler. So this ruler is from TikTok. It would have been nice if there would have been a line going right down the diagonal, just like this is, because then I could line it up. I do have rulers that do that. They're just upstairs, and I'm too lazy to go up there, but I can eyeball mine to get it right, so I'm not worried about it. So my tip of the diagonal is right at this corner, and then the other one is right at the corner of 4.5. And it's not straight. There it is. I think there it is. Okay. So the rule is measure twice, cut once. So really take your time to measure. Make sure that you're looking at it right. Make sure your lighting is good. So then that way you're getting the best cut and the best accuracy that you possibly can get. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit off, and that's fine, but you want it as close to perfection as you can possibly get it. It's a little off. You can compensate for that in the seams. If it's a lot off, it's going to be a problem. Make sure that these lines are completely flat. If there's a little bit of a bend in here, a little bit of a fold, that will create somewhat of a problem later for you when you're trying to square it up, and then when you sew it, it comes out, and then it's like, oh, that looks off. Well, that's the reason why it looked off, is because there was a little bit of a fold there. So again, take your time. And that's why it takes so long sometimes to do things, because you have to take your time, or because there are better tools that you could use that may eliminate this and will help the process to go a lot faster. But again, it would be too much like right for me to go upstairs to get it. So I will suffer in silence. I'm measuring, I'm looking, I'm making sure everything is nice and straight, and then I trim. Most patterns, there shouldn't be a lot that you are trimming off. If there is, then check your measurements again, because you should not be wasting a ton of fabric. Okay. So that was the last one. And you can see right here, like that's the waist. So our half square triangles are done. We have our center block. And now it is time to work on the flying geese. I have a bad habit with fabric that tends to look the same on both sides. This is the right side. This is the wrong side. This is a little bit more pronounced on this side. So just making sure that I have it right, because I can mess it up not paying attention to which is which. It happens, like I said, even to the best of people, but we just want to make sure that we have it right sides up. So I didn't have to do them all at one time, but since I have the room, I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. I marked these already. So again, there's that diagonal line right here. This time with the flying geese, though, this is the stitch line. So when I place these on here and I line everything up, this time I'm stitching right on the line. If I'm concerned with my accuracy, I will do a little to the outside. Not on the inside where this is, but on the outside of that, because then that will help me to get a perfect flying geese and not to cut any excess of the the light gray off. But when I mean a little bit, I'm talking again a hair. We're going to use that line as our guide. And again, we're going to chain stitch. Take our time as best as we can, get it on that line or directly next to it, and just do each one. It really doesn't matter the side that you're doing it on, but this is working just out perfectly on that side, so that's the side that I'm doing it. But you're going because you're going to do the same thing on the other side. And it matters on the other side when you do the other side because you'll have a completely different block if you don't do opposites. So this is going this way. You absolutely do not want to put this, even though you could, it would be upside down because it'll go like this. And then you would just have to flip it. But just make sure everything is going in the right direction. So I do try to make sure that I keep them all going the same way. Where this would really make a difference is if you were using two different color squares. Because if you flip it, then that means that your design will be flipped as well. And we're just lining everything up. These are small blocks, so I don't really need to pin them. But if you feel some kind of way, you can absolutely pin or clip. If you didn't want to have them out like this, you could, oops, and I'll just show you what I mean. I could stack them and clip. So just so I'm getting them all out the way. But I feel like by the time I clipped it, I just could have sewn them. Just showing my clip. And again, this is totally up to you if you're a clipping person. So I could have done all 8 of them, clipped them, and then taken them to my machine. There is going to be some difference in this with the type of batik because each cut has a different shading of that green color with the blue and the yellow. So you'll see some look a little lighter, some look a little darker, but that's okay. But if you preferred to fussy cut all the green out, you could have used a little bit more fabric and then just made sure it was all the green part of the design. If you're worried about that shade in the way that it's constructed. And what I mean by that is, see how it's like a deeper blue up here, it's more yellowish in here, and it's a deeper green here. So that's up to you. Let's pull these out a little bit so our thread doesn't go back in. These are all chain pieced. And you can see them here. This is what I was talking about. See how these look very yellow? These look very green. And then these look very much like blue. It's just the way that this was dyed and made, but it really has no real effect. If you wanted to, you could have stitched another line and made these like really cute half square triangles, right? I don't need them that small, so they'll go in my scrap pile. I'm going to cut off a 1/4 inch. I can use my straight edge if I prefer. I can line this up with the 1/4 inch mark on my ruler and just cut. Because I will have to press these in order to get the next piece on. We really haven't moved into like really difficult blocks yet. So most of the blocks that we've been making have been relatively easy. And it's all relative. Okay, there goes that coughing. Excuse me. Because one person will tell you those are really easy. And then somebody else will tell you that was really hard. And I just say relative because it's relative to your experiences, to your comfort level. So these very well could be easy blocks. To somebody else, this is like a confident beginner. And this is especially because of the flying geese and the half square triangles. Line this up. Boom. Okay, so all of these are done. We're ready to take them to our ironing board and press them open. And then what we'll do is the same thing on the other side. I cut up these because I use them for scraps later. They're too small for me for a quilt. And I don't want to have a lot of half square triangles laying around that I'm like, what are you going to do with all that? So here we go. And what we are going to do is press that open. And again, we want to make sure that seam is flat and we're pressing. We don't have to do a lot of ironing. Because the more ironing you do, the more you distort it. And we don't want to distort this. We want to keep this as square as possible. Pressing just requires us to get that seam open and then leave the iron down on top of it. So I don't have to move it all around the seam. I may have to shift it from place to place if the piece were bigger, but that would be about it. Oops. One more. Okay. So this is half of the flying geese. And then on the other half, here's the other side. And we're going to lay that down. This should overlap. And because when you go up, that's what's going to give you your 1/4 inch seam. That's what's going to make your point. So it needs to overlap. And then you'll take the seam machine and either start and work your way down, or you can turn it around and do it from the corner out. That's up to you. If I can help it, I prefer to do it from this end down just because I want to make sure that I have that point. And that point is going to point later because it's going to make a difference when I put the pieces together to create the block. And again, take your time and there's 8 of these to put all these 8 blocks together. You can play around with how it's done. If I do this side, I'm going to lose that blue. I'm going to have the blue actually. If I do this side, I'm going to lose that blue. So it depends on, especially with this type of fabric, which way you have it go. And it also matters if you are using directional fabric. So you do want to make sure that your lines are both going in the same direction, because otherwise you could have some going this way and some going this way. So some could be going vertical and horizontal. Ask me how I know, because I've done that. It's not the end of the world, but it can make your block look wonky. So make sure everything is set the way that you want it to go before you stitch. And you can check them out afterwards. You would just have to seam rip a lot, and that's not the end of the world. I am trying to use some of those colors, those yellows and those blues, because I think that it will make all the difference in the world when I see like the difference throughout the blocks rather than seeing them be all the same. So now if I wanted this blue, I drew the line this way. I could just change the line if I wanted more of the blue. This way I get more of the green, and then I have some blue on this side. So actually I could do it this way. But again, just really pay attention. Take your time for this reason. So we are not in a race to get that block to look the way that you want it to look. We had this one already set. So again, you could put all of your piecings together and then just sew the unit, or you could do them one by one like I am. That's up to you. Okay. And here's another one where we'll see more blue. Matter of fact, let me put this blue with that green. That's just to mix it up a little bit. And that's just, I'm seeing like that portion of the blue of the fabric be a little bit more dominant. And that's why I'm just choosing to use it there. You don't have to, depending on the fabric that you're using. We have 2 more to go. It's a little bit more green on this side, so we'll go with the green. And again, I could just sew these and not pay any attention to it whatsoever. It wouldn't matter. But since I have a little bit of time on my hands, I figure, what the heck? A little bit more yellow on this side, a little more green on this side. We'll do a little bit more yellow and do that last one. So when we finish this last one, then we'll do the same thing that we did before. We'll cut off that excess. If you're making a bigger flying geese block unit, you can absolutely do that second stitch line and make little half square triangles. I'm not interested in doing that, so I'm fine the way it is. So I can use my scissors this time, just so you can see that you don't have to use a rotary cutter if you don't prefer. Any of my strings that are hanging, it would just be easier to cut those out now. And I want just about a 1/4 inch, and I could use my scissors to trim. It is totally up to you. So you could use your straight edge and your rotary cutter, or you could use your scissors. Now, am I probably getting bigger than a 1/4 inch seam with these, or possibly less than? Sure. It is not the end of the world, but it's up to you which way you prefer to go. So either your scissors or your rotary cutter would be fine. And these scissors are really great. So because these scissors are great, they are cutting through this like butter. And that's just S1. This one has some threads hanging. So let's get rid of those threads. And so all these are done. So now it's time to press those. And we will take our little rotary cutter just to shred this up and add that to our pile. So I do use these scraps to stuff pillows because we don't waste fabric if we can help it. So again, we're going to press now that open to create our flying geese. And again, we have 8 of these that we're pressing. You're not doing a lot of ironing, just press. It may want to fold back on itself. You could use a clapper. Is it a clapper? That will help to hold it down. Layering them on top of each other will also help. But you just really want to make sure that that seam is nice and flat. And I'm just moving down the ironing board, pressing those open. And we don't need to move the iron all around it to create the waves by ironing it instead of pressing. Okay. So this should look like this. And there should be about a 1/4 inch at the top. Sometimes you may miss that mark for that 1/4 inch a little bit. Sometimes. If they give you the measurement in the pattern for this, when we create them, then they will tell you that once everything is done, what your final unit should be. So they tell you they should be 2.5 by 4.5. So it was just the same size as this. The only thing we did was replace those corners with the color. So if we use our ruler again, you can line it up. But I also want to see, when I line this up, to see if it's 2.25. I also want to acknowledge that if I sew on that 1/4 inch, that I'm not getting a little bit of white in there. So this one is good. This one's a little off, and let me show you what I mean. See how you can see how it just comes up a little bit? So I can cut that off, but I just want to make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to before I cut it. And trim that little bit of square off, or that little piece of And it's just a little hairline, and it straightens it out a little bit better. And again, this helps, and it's easy enough to say, I'm not doing it, especially when there are a lot of them. But it does make all the difference in the world if you take the time to look at it, to see if there are any flaws, and to make sure that everything measures the way that you need it to measure. Now, the way that I stitch them is also going to help, but I just want to make sure that everything is nice, straight, and it meets the approval of the pattern guide. And so far, so good. And there are a couple that are kind of sort of close, like this one here. And I'll show that to you in a minute because I'm going to have to play games with it. So I'll show you this one. If I can lift it up and show it to you. Because I'm going to play with it and I'm going to make it work. Let me clip. Just so you can see what happened. And sometimes that's why we make, like, if they tell you to make 8, you make 10. Okay. So if you look at this, and this is a little exaggerated because I can push it down just a little bit, you can see a little bit of that white, right? So that means that this point is going to get cut off. So if I do right here, like at a 1/8 of an inch rather than a 1/4 of an inch, I will save that point. If I do it exactly a 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to lose part of that point. So that's why it's important to line everything up so that you can see that. What they have you do is create a unit now that looks like this. So since the unit is going to look like that, I'm going to use that one that's a little flawed, and I'm going to play around with that with the one that isn't, to make sure that I get it to look the way that I want it to look. So I'm going to line these up. And what I'm going to do is they're right here and right here. And this is white thread, so I apologize for that. There's a cross right there where they cross. I'm going to try to stitch right over that cross. That'll save that point. But that means that I'm going to have to go to 1/8 for that. Or when I line it up, I'm going to have a little extra in the seam. Either way is fine. Oops. We picked everything up and didn't pick up the bottom one. So I'm going to line these up at the top. And then I'm going to take it to the machine. And we are going to stitch. Take our time and backtrack if you like a little bit. And then when I go under this foot, I'm going to take my time and try to go right through that X. And I'll show you that one in a minute, right after I do a couple more of these. And that's just so it runs through. But the same way, I want to go right through that X. And again, that's going to help with every other point. So that's the purpose of it. So this will now create 4 units from the 8. So we're doubling these. And this unit should also be, once we measure it, should be 4.5. But what's most important right now is getting through that X at the right point. If we get through that X at the right point, all of our flying geese will have points. If we don't get it through there at the right point, okay, here we go. And we're going to cut this. This is the first one. We clipped it. And let's see how we did, because if we didn't, we can go back and fix it. And you can see it just caught the tip at that point, but just enough where it's still pointing, and it works for me. So we're going to press that. 1 down, 3 to go. And I'm just getting the tip of that point, but those points are the point. 2 down, 2 to go. This didn't get it. That's a perfect point. 3 down, 1 to go. This like never happens that I make all of them. Great job. So we have all the points. And now we can take it back to our iron. We're going to give this a great press. And then we are going to square up those blocks to make sure that they are 4.25, 4.5. So you can press to one side if you prefer. You can press to the other side if you prefer. Or you could press them open if you prefer. It's all up to you. There's no rule that says you can't have some seams open, some seams pressed to one side. There's no rule for that. There again are experiences where people will say what they prefer, but there's no rule. And they say if the quilting police comes after you, just tell them where to go. And this should look like that. So of course we have 4 more to go, 3 more. Our half square triangles are together, so we have 4 of those. And we have our center block, which has been waiting since the beginning, and we only have 1 of those. So once this is finished, we'll have all of our units done, and it will be time to put the block together. Again, the only thing that we're doing here now with these is we are pressing the seam however we choose to press it, and we're going to make sure that these are 4.5 inches square. Looking at my raggedy nails, I'm like, I think I tore them up. I really don't want to spend the money to get them done this week. But I'm trying to think, has it been 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And I want to say it's only been 2. Okay. So our 4 units are together. Oops. If we used our 1/4 inch. We should have 4.5 inches. So we're going to line everything up. Let's use the ruler the right way. I was like, how is that working? And we should have 4.5 inches square. If it's a little off, we can trim some of it up to make it work. But it shouldn't be much off, and some of that is from just the ironing, pressing, if you will. But you shouldn't hear much coming off of it. Okay, so that's one. We'll just set all of that up. And some of these will be maybe a little imperfect, and some of them will be just right. We're just making sure that we have the right measurements, and we're laying everything out so that we can stitch them together. And they should, keyword is should, be just about right if everything else was good. And here we go. Let's move that down for you a little bit. So you can see like the star that forms. And it will even look more like a star if we turned it that way. And this is creative freedom, right? So you could have this as a block, and there's nothing wrong with it. Or you can do it the way that the pattern had it, which is to do it like this. Okay, so it's totally up to you which way you want that to look. But I have 9 blocks, 9 units, which gives me a 9 patch. And that's why we made sure in the beginning we talked about 9 patches, because you're going to see them come up a lot. So I just take those rows and flip, in this case, the third one to the second. You could very well flip the first one to the second if you like, but something's going to go to the middle. And then we're going to take this to our machine and we are going to stitch the 2 units together. If you feel the need to do a back stitch, whatever floats your boat, make sure all your seams are nice and flat, or go into the side you want them to go to. With this one, again, remember, you want to go through that center part of the X. Because if you don't, you're going to mess up your point. If you're a little under the center of that, then you will have a lot of space in between your point and the next piece. So it's totally up to you, but I'd rather have my point than to lose my point. cut off rows 1 and 2. And we can lay those back out. And then we can attach column 1 to it. And again, this is up to you how you want to piece these together. I just prefer to work in rows this way. But if you have another way that you prefer, you absolutely don't have to follow me. We have one more down at the bottom. Okay, so that goes that way. And then we need to press each of the rows. Oh, no, this one was next. It doesn't matter, but I like to keep it in the right order. Again, go through my X with this one. Put those scissors out the way. Okay. And then the last one here. You also have these here. You want to make sure that those points don't go away. Okay. Let's put these over and press these. So there is one unit right there. And let me see. There's not much you could do about that. I could go in and try it again, but let me show you right here. Like I would have loved for this point to have been right up against the edge like that point. It's not the end of the world, but it's just a little off. And again, if I choose to go back in and do it, I can. If I can live with it, then it's going to stay that way. And because in my mind I can live with it, it will stay that way. If I couldn't live with it, I have to seam rip. But it is totally up to you whether you feel like you can live with something or not. Excuse me. Big errors I can't live with. If, I really, really, really cut off my points, I can't live with that. But if it's a little bit of a chop, I'm not seam ripping for that. I think I'm going to close these seams. I just thought about that. We're going to nest. So I'm going to close the seams. So I'm going to press these. These are going to go to the outside. And the one in the center will be pressed to the inside. Okay, and that's nice and flat. So I'm going to do the same thing. There is a thread. And if it, like sometimes I'll catch it in the quilting, sometimes I'll catch it in the ironing. These are going to the outside, one in the center. And that's just me repeating to myself something so that I remember which way the seams are going to go. And again, you can press open if you like. And that's the other row that looks like that. And then for this one, I'm going to press the seams in, which is actually be perfect because then the points are to go in that direction and I don't have to worry about bulk. And here is the center. Okay. So again, we have that. You can start to see it coming together a lot more. We need clips because we pressed going out one way in the other way. We can nest our seams. So get those seams right on top of each other. Push those two inward. And that will help us to lock those seams in place. Now, sometimes I can get this upside down the wrong way. So I will open it up to make sure. And we're almost finished this block. So we have 2 seams and a press to go. Trying not to get the thread to pop back out of the needle. Sometimes I'll think that it is long enough and voila, it is not. Didn't mean for it to go this way because that means that I can't see that point. So we're going to hope and pray that we went through that X. If we didn't, I might pull that one out. I'll get it right on the other side. Okay, and it's a little off, but at least I didn't cut that point. That's my bigger issue. So you can see there's like about a 1/8 of an inch, if you will, 16. But that point is still going to point. You're not going to notice it unless you just happen to be looking that close. And so we're not going to worry about it. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. Make sure our seams are together. Lock this in place with our fingers. Do the same thing to the other side. And again, this is where we take our time because this is what we want. And clip. This is a little off. And I could tell it was off. So I had a big bubble and I was like, that shouldn't happen. Yeah, and then see that bubble disappeared. And it wasn't crazy. So I do want to get through that little X. So let me turn it the way I'm supposed to. It's not the end of the world. If I really felt like it, I could go back, rip that seam out, and do it again. But like I said, if it's not that deep, it's not that deep. Make sure my seams are flat. Go right through that X. This was the second one, right? Yep. So I'm lifting up the foot. Again, if my seam is going to the back, the foot will want to push it back there, and I don't want that to happen. And then we got that one right there. Okay. So the block is together. This is the double T. And let's press it so that we can give it that final look. Whoop. I keep putting my iron close to my machine, which number one I shouldn't do. And then what I do, what happens is that the feet come out, and so then it pushes it away from the machine. And that's how it ends up falling over every time I do that. So one would think that I would stop putting it that close to the machine, but I'm not going to learn until something happens that's going to give me a permanent memory to stop doing that. And I'm not asking for a permanent memory. I just know that because I'm being hard headed, that's what's going to happen. Let's see the other side. So again, this is the double T block, American. Is it American Piecing and Quilting? I think it is not that. It's American Patchwork and Quilting. So American Patchwork and Quilting, American Patchwork and Quilting. The All People Quilt is where you can get this from. You can get a ton of quilt blocks with directions from their page. You can get a ton of free patterns from their page. So it is a great resource if you are a beginning quilter, if you're trying to find patterns that are very inexpensive, or our keyword is free. And here we go. So the block is pressed, the block is finished. It is key to have this white up here at those points because again, when I put them together or when I add the sashing, I want just enough there that it'll go into the seams and I can still see my points. But I think this came out really cute. I could see this as a whole quilt. I could see it just as a quilt block. So again, thank you for joining me for block number 7, the double T quilt and the double T block. And you will see me again tomorrow for another quilt block that we will be making on our road to making 20 for the month of May. Thank you, thank you, thank you.